Hey, we are two Star Wars nerds, and we just recently kind of finished up our Why We Love The Prequels series. For now, we're going to come back with a lot of really, really cool stuff that we're excited about. This is going to be probably a lifelong series on the channel, to be honest. Until this channel stops, this series will be around. But I, in particular, wanted to address a common complaint that I hear about the prequels. That the dialogue is bad. Have you ever heard that complaint?
Yes, as an adult I have.
Yeah, as a kid we've talked about how we were insulated as kids from all of the hate about the prequels. And recently there's kind of been a resurgence and people liking them again. But I think people are looking at them actually objectively.
Right.
They're finding out they're actually good movies. Go figure. But anyway, what's even interesting about the prequels, we won't necessarily get into it here, but I didn't like them as much as a teenager. It wasn't until I got older that I liked them. Liked them as a kid, had teenage years, and got back.
I've always liked them. You just had your angsty teen where you're too cool for everything.
Yeah, I guess so. And in particular, with the dialogue, we want to look at something from Attack of the Clones. And if those of you who watch want a full video basically analyzing all of the complaints about dialogue, let us know. We'll make it. It'll be long, but if that's what you want, we'll do it, or I'll do it at least. I'll sit here and chat with you all about it. But I want to take 2 lines of dialogue out of Attack of the Clones, read through them, and then we can talk and analyze and show exactly why the prequels have great dialogue. So if you remember the beginning of Attack of the Clones, you have Anakin and Obi-Wan in the speeder, and Anakin's flying around all crazy, and Anakin's being very witty with Obi-Wan. He has his quick remarks. And Obi says this: if you spent as much time practicing your saber techniques as you do your wit, you would rival Master Yoda as a swordsman. There's a lot of very important words in there. In particular, essentially, you understand what he's saying. If you took the energy that you have, my apprentice, if you took the energy that you use for your wit and you put it to your fighting techniques, you would come close to Master Yoda as a swordsman, not as a Jedi, just as a swordsman. We understand that concept from Obi-Wan. He's a great teacher. Yeah. But then, obviously, we understand the prequels are about this push and pull of Anakin eventually to the dark side. And obviously, Palpatine is grooming him. And I'll read this quote from Palpatine, and then you and I compare, contrast, deep dive, analyze, all that fun stuff. So, later in the movie, Palpatine to Anakin says, "You don't need guidance. In time, you will learn to trust your feelings. Then you will be invincible. I've said it many times, you are the most gifted Jedi I've ever met." Already stark contrast. Anakin says, "Thank you, Your Excellency." Then Palpatine says, "I see you becoming the greatest Jedi of all, Anakin. Even more powerful than Master Yoda." And that's right there. I think that is such good writing, because on one end, in the Jedi Council, his master is actually saying, hey, if you could actually be such a good swordsman that you would rival Master Yoda. Right. And then on the dark side, you have Palpatine saying, you don't need guidance. You don't need anybody leading you. Trust your feelings. You'll be invincible. He doesn't even talk about, he just says, you're the most gifted Jedi I've ever met. And he says, you will be the greatest, even more powerful than Master Yoda. So, I can geek out about this, but I want to give you space for your thoughts as well. When we're talking about these 2 lines, I mean, what's coming to, in terms of dialogue, how do you think this helps or hurts the prequels? What do you think?
I think it helps, and I think this is just one of the many examples. If you go back and actually analyze all the movies, you do see a lot of connections in the dialogue, and it's very the dialogue is very intentional, and it's building. It's not just character development, but the dialogue's actually moving the story. And I think this is a great example of the beginning of Attack of the Clones. This is what Obi says, and then a little bit later, Palpatine pretty much says the exact opposite, because he's trying to undermine the Jedi Order, and I think he's trying to puff Anakin up and get him to, not want to do anything with the Jedi, but to see his side and for him to join his side. So he's trying to, the whole time he's trying to slowly turn Anakin against the Jedi Order, and I think he knows Anakin's pride, and he knows Anakin's weaknesses, and he knows the Jedi well enough to know what they're saying, and he's using that to trap Anakin and pull him deeper into the dark side. And I think if it wasn't for quotes like this and instances or dialogue like this, I don't think it would have been as a smooth, I guess, for lack of a better word, of a transition from Vader, or from Anakin to Vader. It would have been more like, where'd that come from? But if you look at the entire prequels overall, the dialogue sets up the transition, and it sets up the story.
I agree, and I think the dialogue is so critical in transitioning Anakin to Vader, because it's not just his emotion, and it's not just his love for Padme and the pain from his mother and the anger at the Jedi Council.
There's a lot.
I think Palpatine is the greatest villain in Star Wars, and maybe of all time, honestly, because when you look at the character grooming and planting seeds and manipulating, I mean, even if you cycle back to Palpatine basically manipulating the Force and midichlorians to create Anakin, and then all of the things that he's potentially set up to kind of push Anakin's life towards him,
right? And
then manipulating his thoughts with all these very intentional phrases and turns of speech. Because at the end of the day, Palpatine was a politician.
Yep, he's a very good politician.
He knew how to say the right thing.
Yeah.
He didn't waste words.
Right.
He was very, very careful. I mean, he deceived the entire galaxy.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing. And I love that this dialogue in particular here is so nuanced that it picks up on the fact that there is a pride, there is a puffing up, and it's saying you don't need direction, you don't need a leader. I want to champion you. That's really what he's saying. And Anakin's like, oh yeah, but I think you're right. Yep. He's like, yeah, I agree. I think I am better than all these guys. And then not only that, it's just interesting, this black and white, this opposite interaction between Palpatine and Obi-Wan, because that very thing, the difference between rivaling someone in a skill and being greater and more powerful, knowing that he wants power and strength.
Right. Those are key words to Anakin.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the many reasons that the dialogue is great. We've even talked about another dialogue choice with Anakin referring to Obi-Wan as a father figure to him, and Obi-Wan saying, "You are a brother to me."
Yep.
And I think this plays into that as well, because
so
looking to his father figure says, "Hey, you could have great skill." And then you have someone else who is inserting himself as a father figure, essentially saying you're the greatest thing ever.
Right.
And in that power void, I suppose that's where Palpatine and the dark side really grab a hold of him and really begin to shine through.
Right.
One last thought I have. I worked at a bank. You know this. You're married to me.
Yes.
But for those of you who don't know, I worked at a bank for a while. Did not like it. Crazy stories about working there. But nonetheless, when I worked there, what was really interesting is they don't have you study the counterfeits. They have you study the real dollars and real bills.
Makes sense.
And what I noticed in Anakin is that he studied the counterfeit a little more. He was interested in that. And at the bank, they had me do that and all the other employees, because then when a counterfeit came by, you'd be like, this doesn't look like the original. And you'd be able to notice it. But why I think this line of dialogue is so brilliant is that Palpatine essentially got his focus off of what he should be focusing on and onto this counterfeit power and this counterfeit strength.
Yep, onto himself.
Oh,
so he just
yeah.
Built up that pride and had Anakin focus more on how great he was instead of where he needed to grow.
And Jedis were supposed to be keepers of the peace, not strong and powerful just for the sake of strength and power.
Right.
That's the Sith way.
Right.
And so, what do you think about this line of dialogue in particular? Like in context of Attack of the Clones, do you feel like this is like an extremely pivotal moment, or do you think that this is something overlooked and that doesn't change the narrative very much?
Oh, it's overlooked, but I think it does change the narrative because, like you said, people do complain about the dialogue, and I think if you're just passively watching or just looking for what to critique, it's easy to find things. I mean, we can all do that with everything, but when you actually look at the dialogue and you look at how each quote, I guess, relates, like this Obi-Wan to then a Palpatine one later, you see how they're not playing off each other, but I guess how they intertwine to create who Anakin becomes.
Yeah, and this, if you like this concept of diving deeper and analyzing the dialogue in the prequels, let us know in the comments, because if you're looking for something a little longer and deeper and more comprehensive about really breaking down common critiques, let's do it.
Yeah.
But let us know what you think about these quotes in this exchange. Is this something you've seen before? Is this something you think has importance or not? We'd love to hear from you. And with that, we are two Star Wars nerds, and may the Force be with you always.